And now the National Book Award in nonfiction. Roz Chast's cartoons have been published in many magazines, including The New Yorker, Scientific American, Harvard Business Review, Redbook, and Mother Jones. Now that's an assortment if I've ever heard one. She is author of Theories of Everything, Selected, Collected, and Health-Inspected Cartoons of Roz Chast, 1978 to 2006, a compilation of her favorite cartoons. She also illustrated The Alphabet from A to Y with bonus letter Z, the best-selling children's book by Steve Martin. It gives me great pleasure to welcome Roz Chast.
Thank you all for coming. I'm hoping this tech stuff is working. Is it up there? Okay. This is a selection from a book that I wrote about taking care of my parents at the end of their lives. They were both born in 1912. They knew each other since they were both in the same 6th grade class. They graduated from college into the Depression. They were both children of Russian immigrants who spoke very little English, grew up very poor, and I think this definitely affected certainly their scrimping habits. They were really world-class savers. They never threw anything away, and it was just really extraordinary. And they lived in the same apartment in Brooklyn where I grew up. They moved into it in 1959, and they lived there until their last couple of years when I pretty much had to move them out of their apartment. They were around, I think they were 94, and it was just getting too hard for them to live on their own, and I wasn't living close to them. So I moved them up to an assisted living place near me in Connecticut, about a less than 10-minute drive away. And anyway, that's a little bit of background. And I had no siblings, so it was really kind of on me. And this book is about those final chapters of life that for some reason I knew very little about. I don't think it's really a part of this culture to talk about it. And it's about their relationship with each other. And anyway, here's what it is. Here's what I used to think happened at the end. One day, old Mrs. McGillicuddy felt unwell, and she took to her bed. She stayed there for, about 3 or 4 weeks, growing weaker day by day. One night, she developed something called a death rattle, and then she died. The end. What I was starting to understand was that the middle panel was a lot more painful, humiliating, long-lasting, complicated, and hideously expensive. My parents had been in pretty good health for their age. They did not have heart disease, diabetes, or cancer, but the reality was that at 95, their minds and their bodies were falling apart. At the end of July, my father told my mother that he wanted to pack it in. He was tired of the work of staying alive and tired of his excruciatingly painful bed sores. My mother did not care for his defeatist attitude. I told Daddy he was coming with me to 100 if I had to drag him kicking and screaming. He entered hospice, which my mother didn't particularly approve of either. So, the hospice lady has started coming around. She's very nice, but I told her, I don't want anyone coming around with this long, sad face. I want positive thinking, not a bunch of people standing around singing Kumbaya. On the evening of October 16th, 2007, one of my dad's nurses telephoned me. Your dad is having difficulty swallowing. She gave me a list of groceries to bring the next day. When I went to the store, I picked up some ice cream sandwiches as well. They were his favorite. The next morning, I went to the place. The place is what I called the assisted living place they were in. They had put my dad in the wheelchair. I feel like I'm falling. I tried to feed him some ice cream sandwich. He seemed very, very tired, and Aide and I moved him to the bed. I curled up next to him and held his hand and patted his forehead. I tried to telepath to him how much I loved him and that I knew how much he loved me, and that we were good, and that it was okay to let go. He said this to me, "What's Nina doing?" Nina is my daughter. I said, "She's playing her banjo." He smiled and fell asleep. It was our last conversation, but I didn't know that then. I rejoined my mother, who was in a dither. "We have to call downstairs and get them to deliver lunch for Daddy. We have to get him some soup." There was some serious denial going on. "Mom, did it ever occur to you that Dad may be actively dying?" That did not go over well. "I do not like to talk about death, and I will not talk about death." My father seemed comfortable. I was meeting a friend nearby for lunch. "I'll be back around 3. At around 2:15, my phone rang. "Your father is passing." I knew it would happen soon, but not that soon. I drove back as fast as I could, but he had died 10 minutes before I arrived. Joan, the hospice nurse, told me the sequence of events, that his breathing had deteriorated, that she and my mother were by his side, that at some point my mother left the room for a minute to use the bathroom, and that's when he died. She told me that the phenomenon of a dying person choosing to die when his loved one left the room, if only for a moment, was one she had seen as a hospice nurse many times. She added that his death had been peaceful, that he just slipped away. I kissed his forehead, which was still slightly warm. It was so clear that he, my dad, was no longer there. He was gone, gone, gone. Someone called the funeral home. They came to take the body away. Someone told me to sit with my mother elsewhere so she didn't have to witness the removal, so I did. I brought my mother back to my house so she wouldn't have to spend the first night without my dad alone. And that's it.